There we go. Excellent. All right. Well, hi, everybody. I'm Lily Massey-McKinley. I'm the Executive Director of the Kentucky Student Success Collaborative, an initiative of the Council on Post-Secondary Education. So excited to have you all join us today for another meeting of the Student Basic Needs Action Network. This group is an incredibly diverse group of community partners, state agencies, colleges and universities, several student representatives invited to join us as well. I hope that they're able to attend today, but they'll certainly be with us in the future. And really, we are working on several objectives, and I'll get to those in just a second. So a quick review of our agenda today, super quick, jumping in and getting ready. Our goal for these first 3 virtual meetings of the Action Network is really kind of level setting. And so getting everybody on the same page around our data, around the issues, around the programs and opportunities, and really to start the early brainstorming in small group discussion around what do we see as the possibilities and really the opportunities or the levers for maximum impact. And that is going to lead us to our series of 3 in-person, much more in-depth and robust in-person conversations where we're going to be building out really a strategy or an action plan and a set of recommendations for our state as a whole to work together to increase basic needs support for students. So just to kind of review quickly, our approach is really 2-pronged. It's both ends of the pipeline in a very comprehensive, holistic view of who our target audience is for this support. On the one hand, we're looking to increase access to basic needs supports for current college students who, as we kind of saw in our very first meeting, many are accessing some public benefits, but there is a potential gap there where we can hopefully increase access to those benefits for students. And another is just looking at our organizational, our community supports, our institutional supports for those students through our own programs, services, funds, et cetera. And then the other side of this really important work is looking at opportunities to increase access to post-secondary education for citizens of the Commonwealth who are receiving public benefits and may be interested in a post-secondary pathway, which has a really strong connection to increased earnings and economic mobility in their future. So that financial self-sufficiency, which is the goal for all individuals. So this is just a quick overview of our timeline and what the upcoming meetings will focus on. In our last meeting in January, our kickoff, we were welcomed by our Lieutenant Governor. And then we heard from Kentucky Stats, our longitudinal data system, on some of the landscape, our context here in Kentucky. I was also able to share our student basic needs infographic that we've worked on that provides both a national context for this work as well as some Kentucky context. Today, we're really focusing heavy on these basic needs programs and services, eligibility determinations, and just how does an individual experience our process. Next meeting, I'm really excited about our March meeting. We're going to be welcomed by our Commissioner for the Cabinet for Health and Family Services, Lisa Dennis, and then we will hear an update from our kind of national thought partner and consultant, Carrie Welton, with the Institute for College Access and Success. And Carrie will be sharing her review of a policy scan in Kentucky and how we are interpreting some federal guidelines, like opportunities to increase access and support for students as well as citizens. And then, as you all know, there's another element to the work of this basic needs project here in Kentucky, and that is a faculty research project, which we have amazing faculty partners from the University of Kentucky, from the University of Louisville, and from Eastern Kentucky University. And they have done an asset map of basic needs supports available at all institutions across the state. They have also interviewed program administrators at 9 participating institutions, and they are about to embark on focus groups with about 18 different focus groups with students to hear about their experience accessing basic needs support, as also just their awareness in general of the supports that are available to them. So our faculty will be able to share some early findings from their conversations and their research in our upcoming meeting. Then, as I mentioned, we're going to get in person. So we would really love if you can all join us in Frankfurt. I know that that is a trek for many of you. We are happy to reimburse travel with the state rate for mileage for you to join us. But we will be really doing some great group work, prioritizing these high impact ideas that we brainstorm throughout these virtual conversations, drafting our recommendations, and then thinking about from our own organizational lens, what is our role to play in this work and in this partnership. And then we'll be finalizing that at our May meeting. And then those recommendations which will have been vetted by our key stakeholders, we'll be able to share and kind of really think through an action plan. One other, I think, exciting announcement is just that Kentucky had applied to be a part of a national learning community around student basic needs that is being hosted and facilitated by the Massachusetts Department of Higher Education. And we just received notification today that Kentucky was accepted. And so this is a 3-year kind of technical assistance support that's funded by the ECMC Foundation. So when we come up with our strategy, we now are a part of a national learning community that will, I think, be able to, I guess, walk alongside us as we are implementing this strategy. They're not going to really be doing the implementation aspect of it, but they will be able to kind of share with them what we're doing, learn from other states. And I'm just really excited to be a part of that learning community. Okay. So one thing that I love to do in meetings, just a little bit of a break in the ice and a little bit of getting to know each other, is to engage and ask you for some of your engagement through this platform called Mentimeter. So it is a really easy, I'm just going to put the link directly into the chat so it's even easier for you. You can click on this link and join this presentation. Hopefully, if you're on a computer, it's probably going to be easier for you to do. If you are on your phone, it's still totally possible, but you might lose being able to see multiple things at the same time. All right, breakfast cereals. Okay, so just share your breakfast cereal that's your favorite, makes you happy in the morning. I know this is really a treat for me, but when I get my kids the Reese's peanut butter puff cereal, I mean, I'm sure I eat more of it than they do. Every once in a while. Reese's Puffs, there it is. This is fun. And so I have a few other like more relevant questions after this, but I thought we could just kind of get used to what is Mentimeter and how do we do it in this first little question here. Corn Pops, absolutely. Cocoa Pebbles. Now, like, as you probably know with these Wordle things, word clouds, like the more agreement or consensus you have around something, the bigger the word gets. So it looks like we have a few favorites here, maybe some Cinnamon Toast Crunch, some Cheerios seem to be a staple. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you all so much for humoring me in that. Let's go ahead and get to the next question. Okay, so hopefully on your screen, you saw this advance as well. And I heard a couple of dings. If folks are just joining us, I'm going to re-put this link in the chat. So you can click directly on this link and then provide your insights on some of these most pressing basic needs issues facing our students. So kind of thinking about this from a basic needs issue that affects the most students, maybe looking at it from a basic needs issue that might have the most detrimental effect on a student being able to persist or complete or continue their educational journey. And I'm just really interested in kind of getting just a pulse check of what we see. And I might have missed one or two basic needs areas. So apologies for that. I see some people putting their thoughts in the chat too. So if you're not able to participate in the online voting, thank you for doing that. I see childcare, housing, food. It looks like emergency assistance or just general financial emergencies, a really, really pressing issue. Okay, I'm going to go ahead. Okay, so it looks like financial emergency is our number 1. Housing security, 2. Then we have a tie for 3 around food security and childcare. Absolutely. Okay, so let's go ahead. Okay, so now this is the last one, and you can write more than just one word for this, but just thinking about our work together in collaboration, what do we think are some of the most critical factors that will lead to our success in both developing a strong plan and impact on our populations that we're seeking to serve, and then the implementation piece, of us as a network. Got one email I need to send here.
Just to maneuver the bowel.
Okay, critical success factors: equity, authentic partnerships, equity, cultural competence, best practices, alignment of resources. Hold on, let's see, aligning programs, evidence-based strategies, access to equitable resources, collaboration with campus partners, equity, comprehensive wraparound services, engage more SNAP clients in education and training, collaboration, communication. Whoa, there's even more. Cultural competence, communication, collaboration, accountability, collaboration, and understanding of trauma, wraparound services, parental engagement, two-way conversations. Excellent. Improved policy, some policy opportunities, collaboration with community partners, outreach and collaboration. I see a note in the chat from Gabrielle. That's absolutely true. Thank you, Gabrielle. So just, I know that we kind of tried to rank those, but they're so interconnected, those issues, that oftentimes if you have significant financial stress, then you're probably also experiencing housing insecurity or food insecurity or any of the other issues. Eliminating tripwires. Sounds like an NKU post. Viewing post-secondary as workforce development, absolutely. Support from families, removing barriers, person focus, student voices. Great. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for participating. Oops. These are all really helpful brainstorms that we're going to be able to capture and continue to move forward with. Okay, so we're going to jump right in. Each of our wonderful speakers for us is going to share kind of their expertise, their areas of knowledge, and hopefully help us set the stage. And I'm happy to advance slides. And let's just dive right in. So Carrie.
Yes.
Hi there.
Thanks, Lily.
Yes.
Hey, everyone. Great to be here chatting with you this morning. I'm going to you can go to the next slide, Lily. I'm going to do an overview of why it's so important that we center equity in all of this work, and then review some of the programs that we think about at the federal and state level that are available to help students with their basic needs and security, and then cover a couple of policy and practice opportunities that I have seen working with states and institutions. There's certainly a very long list of those, so I'll just highlight a couple. Next slide, Lily. So it's really important that we continue to center equity in this context because we know that many of the students that we are trying to serve face a broad variety of barriers. And particularly when we think about equity, we know that family income is a strong indicator of a wide range of child outcomes, but the racial wealth gap has limited the transfer of family resources within and across generations, which has negatively affected the intergenerational mobilities of some families of color. There's well-documented systemic and individual racism in the forms of employment discrimination, over-policing, mortgage and insurance discrimination, and much more that have harmed communities of color and reduced their ability to build wealth, own homes, pass on that wealth to their children, which also supports their ability to go to college at the same level as white families. For example, we know different rates of home ownership and the value of homes excuse me, between whites and communities of color have been cited as one of the largest contributors to the racial wealth gap. And these racial differences in home ownership are due in part to past federal policies that codified real estate discrimination. The best example is from the National Housing Act of 1934 that openly denied backing for home loans to Black families while helping low-income white families. And we know that students of color, in this case, Black, Hispanic, Latino, American Indian, or Alaska Native, are more likely to be considered financially independent students who do not rely on resources from their parents for college costs. So they're more likely to have higher levels of unmet need. And we know high levels of unmet financial need can result in students being more likely to borrow, work more hours, decreased enrollment, or drop out, which contribute to less successful post-secondary outcomes. And this context is really critical when we're trying to understand why we focus on equity and ensuring we understand the full context of students' experiences, including the systems that have impacted them negatively. Next slide. Sorry, one more. Thank you. So when we think about comprehensive supports for students, I think about this box that is sort of the new vision for student aid. We think of all of the traditional higher education resources, the ones you see on the left-hand side, and then really thinking about what are all of the federal and state programs that are available that provide basic needs supports for people that could do a better job of supporting the ability of people to achieve longer-term economic mobility through post-secondary education. Because of welfare reform, because of perspectives of deservingness, because of systemic racism, many of these programs have what is called a work-first approach in them, which essentially relegates people to low-wage work and cuts off a pathway to education. Some of this is also based on views of who college students are or who they should be, with the emphasis on that people with low incomes should just go right into low-wage work and get off of government programs, which really just creates a poverty trap. A lot of research shows that even programs that improve employment, when you don't improve wages, do not result in long-term benefits for families or their children, and often result in people coming back into the need for government programs and support. So next slide, please. Thanks. So these are the primary federal public benefits in the student criteria. So when I'm working in a state and the policy scan that I'm doing with Lily right now, I'm doing a deep dive on all of the choices that the state of Kentucky has made around places where they have the ability to be more flexible.
God damn this fucking chair.
And may not be leveraging those opportunities. So that usually includes administrative policy, your state plans. We'll also be talking about and looking at opportunities to potentially move forward legislation that could be beneficial for students. So for nutrition assistance, that is the best program to address food insecurity. We think of the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program and its sort of sister program, SNAP Employment and Training, or SNAP ENT. Students who are enrolled at least half-time qualify for what's called an exemption. A student only has to meet one exemption, for example, participating in a work study or working 20 hours a week. If they say yes to any one of those, they don't also have to be working 20 hours a week. There's a lot of confusion around the SNAP and student rules. And if anybody is interested in that, I have a deeper dive that I can do to talk about SNAP later or in a future meeting. And one of the reasons we focus on SNAP is because it applies to the broadest subset of students, whereas the majority of these other programs require a student to have a child in order to access them. So when we think about welfare, what we traditionally think of as cash assistance, the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families program provides a nominal cash assistance benefit to people who have families with the lowest incomes. There's a federal rule that only allows post-secondary education to be counted for up to 12 months, and then it has to be combined with, on average, about 30 hours of work a week. Which is obviously pretty restrictive, which is essentially telling people that they can't access post-secondary credentials. And then we think about healthcare, which is Medicaid. Kentucky has expanded Medicaid. That is one of the primary things that I look at when I recommend policy changes in a state. There is not currently a student distinction, but I think, as Kentucky probably well knows, work requirements have been attempted by multiple states and have currently been struck down by the courts, federal courts. This has gone all the way to the Supreme Court, but the Biden administration asked the court to stay reviewing the decision until they could review policies. And all of that is to say that the work requirement issue in Medicaid is not dead, where we expect it to come back up at some point and find either some resolution or anticipate that states may try them again. So for childcare assistance, there's two major programs. CCDBG is the Child Care Development Block Grant. It's what we think of as traditionally federal and state childcare subsidies. And then childcare access means Parents in School is actually a program through the Department of Education that provides grants directly to institutions to provide campus on or off campus childcare for income eligible students. When we think of earned income tax credit and child tax credit, I include them. There's not really a student distinction. They are important supports, but as we know, tax incentives, either refundable tax credits or non-refundable tax credits, don't really change the enrollment behavior of students because of their timing of them. They're not timely enough. And then for housing assistance, we think of the income-based housing choice voucher program, Section 8. There are a lot of restrictions on students' abilities to access public housing, which is actually administered by local housing authorities with some exemptions. Lily, next slide, please. So what we've learned is building a comprehensive student aid system that includes public benefits, financial aid, and tax credits helps reduce students' unmet financial need. It increases financial stability, helps students care for their families, decreases debt levels, and complements existing funding streams. And, Lily has mentioned this a couple of times as when you have a robust body of federal and state programs, which, despite some of their ineffectiveness, we do in this country, it makes a lot of sense for federal and state governments, for higher education systems, for communities, for families, and for students to ensure that as people are striving to achieve their own economic security, they're able to access the full suite of resources that are available to them to support them in that journey. And that includes, as Lily has said, ensuring people who are on public programs can access post-secondary and ensuring that students who are in post-secondary programs can access the supports that they need to persist and complete. Next slide, Lily. One more. Thank you. So when we think about policy and practice opportunities, immediate ones that we think about at the campus level are and at the state level are really ensuring that the public benefit, human services, and workforce development programs coordinate. And that means aligning referrals to meet the needs of employers beyond just looking at immediate employment outcomes and looking at training, credentials, degrees where employers are demanding them, and that ensuring education is included in discussions with program participants on the workforce development and employment and training side. I happen to know from having been a low-income first-gen student that college definitely seemed like a fantasy for me. And it took a couple of people to say, like, hey, why aren't you considering this, to really see that as something that was possible for myself? And the more we talk about this and the more we recognize the agency of everybody to ultimately pursue a post-secondary credential, if that's consistent with their dreams and with their vision for themselves and their families, the more people are going to understand that the value of that and see themselves as a college student. And then really looking at policy and performance measures that serve as disincentives to student access and employment and training programs. Higher education can do a lot. There is, very low lift activities, including just sharing information about public benefits as often as possible, centralizing student support services, asking students about their needs, ensuring programs are flexible and equitable, and including students in discussions about the design of supports. And then really thinking about community partnerships, I worked with a community college in New Orleans, and they partnered with a local faith-based organization to bring mental health services onto their campus. And this included crisis mental health care services and also like ongoing supports for people who needed to talk to somebody more frequently. And there are a lot of opportunities to do that in various communities. Next slide, please. And then we think about longer term opportunities to leverage state flexibility, expanding the programs and institutions covered under the SNAP programs of what count as employment and training programs. States have broad flexibility to do this. The state of Massachusetts have every single one of their programs at all of their community colleges verified as programs that, meet the definition of employment and training programs. There's opportunities to improve the work study eligibility and averaging work hours over a long period of time. For SNAP ENT, I know this is something Kentucky is already familiar with and has been working on, but ensuring that community colleges are registered as ENT administrators. And then thinking about all of the ways in both TANF and childcare that, but because they're both block grants, which means states have a lot of flexibility to design those programs. There are a lot of rules and restrictions that the state of Kentucky could decide to lift or ameliorate. And we'll definitely discuss more of those in the policy scan. Sean is going to be talking a bit more about Ready to Work, so I'm excited to hear a little bit more about that later. Next slide, please. Okay. All right, I think I came in under time. I'm not exactly sure, Lily. I may have ran a little bit long, but I'm going to turn it back over to you now.
Okay, thanks so much, Carrie. And yes, everybody, these slides will be sent out. There's a lot of information on them, and that was for note-taking purposes. So we're going to keep moving. And now we have Reese Singaya with the Cabinet for Health and Family Services.
Hi, everyone. Again, my name is Clarissa Singayo, and I am a Public Assistance Program Specialist with DCBS, the Department for Community-Based Services in the Division of Family Support. And today I'll be giving a quick overview on the programs, services, and benefits that we offer and how we determine eligibility. If you go to the next slide. Within the Department for Community-Based Services, the Division of Family Support administers and determines eligibility for several programs. And some of the programs Carrie had mentioned, Medicaid provides healthcare assistance to the families. We have the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, formerly known as the Food Stamp Program, but we call it now SNAP, and that provides food assistance to eligible families. We also have the Kentucky Transitional Assistance Program, or KTAP, which is a financial assistance program for families who have children and have little to no income. And some KTAP recipients are limited to KTAP to 60 months. And I'll go a little bit more detail about KTAP and SNAP ENT. We also have the Child Care Assistance Program, which provides subsidies to families to help pay for child care expenses. Next slide. There are several ways to apply for benefits. We have call services, and the phone number is there, available to individuals who cannot make it to the office. So DCBS workers will conduct the interview over the phone and send documents by mail if we need something returned, something signed. They can also apply online on connect.ky.
I just re-logged in.
Oh, I'm sorry. Connect.ky.gov. So the person enters the information online, and the application is sent to a DCBS worker who will determine what information is needed and send documents again in mail. Some types of Medicaid assistance can be determined when the application is entered online. However, for programs such as SNAP, an interview with the DCBS worker has to be completed. So once that person enters their information, that is sent to DCBS, and they will contact that person to complete that application, either via phone or set up an appointment to come into the office. And again, they can also go to their local DCBS office to apply in person. So they'll meet a DCBS worker, they'll go through the interview, and then be provided any documents that they need. And during the application interview, we gather the household's information and request verification. And that can include things such as identification. So we may need a copy of your driver's license, a date of birth, a copy of birth certificates, address, expenses and income. And it depends on the program, what we need, and what we can also provide on the system. And we give the individual 30 days to return verification for us to determine eligibility. For SNAP and KTAP, the amount of benefits depend on the number of household members and their income and their resources. The certification period for Medicaid, KTAP, and CCAP are usually 1 year, while SNAP is about 6 months. So when the certification period ends, the person must recertify, again, go through the interview process with DCBS to continue receiving benefits. And each program has different eligibility rules and policy. And on the slide, there's a link to the DFS webpage where you can find more information about our agency, our programs, as well as links to our online policy manuals. So for KTAP and for SNAP, we have, work programs, employment training programs. So with SNAP ENT, we have a voluntary ENT program, which means that ENT is available for any SNAP recipients ages 18 up to 59. And there is a subset of SNAP recipients, which we call ABODs, able-bodied adults without dependents, and who must be in a work activity in order to receive a SNAP. And they can do community service on their own or participate in ENT to continue to be SNAP eligible. ENT connects participants with local agencies throughout the state to help them find the training, to gain skills, find employment, and set a path that will lead them to self-sufficiency. We contract with 5 providers: Audubon, Big Sandy, AD, Central Kentucky Community Action Council, Kentuckiana Works, in Northern Kentucky AD, who receive direct referrals from us on ENT. And these service regions are located throughout the state so that an ENT provider is available to anyone who wants to participate in ENT. We also have 8 partners: Brighton Center, their CET program, Catholic Charities, their Common Table program, Center for Employment Opportunities, Family Scholar House, KCTCS, the Jefferson Community Technical College, Northern Kentucky Community Action Commission, Goodwill, OWL, or Opportunities for Work and Learning, and United Training. And they're located in certain counties and provide specific training just depending on what they have available. Like Common Table offers the culinary arts skills training. So the ENT participant is connected to the provider or partner, and they receive case management from them to find out what their needs are, to ensure their obstacles and barriers are met. They also work with the participant to make sure that we find activities such as community service, training, and get that support to ensure that they stay on their path and progress in their activity. Earlier, Carrie mentioned that students must meet certain requirements to be eligible for SNAP. And students attending at least half-time in an institution of higher education must meet certain criteria, such as working 20 hours a week. But they can also be in work-study. They're responsible for the care of a child under 6, or a single parent responsible for the care of a child under 12, receiving KTAP. So those are some of the exemptions that a student, if they meet that and then attending at least half-time, they can be considered eligible students. In the world of ENT, certain KCTCS students can benefit from participating. So students attending KCTCS and who are enrolled in a certification or credential program, programs that cannot be transferred to a 4-year degree, and they participate in ENT, are considered eligible students. So that's a little bit of something that we created to make it a little more accessible for students to receive SNAP. CCAP, or Child Care Assistance Program, also has a work requirement to be eligible for childcare, such as working or participating in E&T fulfills that requirement. So if they're participating in E&T, they're eligible for childcare if they need it. E&T also provides some supportive services. We have transportation assistance that they receive from DCBS, and some of the providers and partners also have supportive services that they can take advantage of. The Kentucky Works program is mandatory for some KTAP recipients. They must participate in a KWP activity for a certain number of hours to be in compliance. And the hours depend on the age of their child. 20 to 30 hours is generally what they will do. The activities and components include community service, work experience, and attending school or training. And the participants are assigned a DCBS case manager who will complete an assessment and work with that participant to find a KWP activity that would best benefit them. And they also contract with the 5 providers that I had mentioned that will help provide additional support to the KWP participants. And that also includes Brighton Center and KCTCS. For students, we contract with KCTCS, Northern Kentucky University, Eastern Kentucky University, and Morehead State University to provide the Ready to Work program. And like she said, Carrie said, Shauna will go a little bit more into detail about the Ready to Work program in KCTCS campus. But generally, the Ready to Work coordinators at these schools provide additional support to students as well as help them find work study. And KTAP also provides supportive services to enable that person to participate. So we can help with car repair or car insurance, and we can also help pay for fees if they're in school or getting uniforms or interview clothing. And there are some short-term trainings that can be paid for with KTAP KWP funds, and that's usually approved by DCBS. And I know we have a question thing, but just want to let you know that we do have some changes coming up with KTAP to modernize the program. We're looking at increasing benefit amounts, which hasn't changed since 1995. Also increasing the resource limits to 10,000, which allows recipients to have the ability to save money. And for SNAP, we're working with APHSA to send recommendations on how on the next 2023 Farm Bill. And one of that includes subsidized wages, disregarding that from SNAP determination and possibly changing some of the eligibility rules. So we continue to look at changes that we can make to provide better services that are easily accessible to all in Kentucky.
Thank you, Reese.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to keep heading on with Shauna. Oh, you're muted.
It helps to take yourself off of mute. Next slide, Lily, please. This has been covered, but you've probably already picked up on the fact that these folks, when they find their way onto our campuses, are perhaps the most high-risk students on the planet, and certainly on our campuses. Next slide, Lily. Originally, I had included this slide because I wanted to point out that while it demonstrates the fact that KTAP eligibility is far below the federal poverty guideline, these are very low income individuals that qualify for KTAP. Historically, that middle column, the benefit in some cases, we have students and folks who would otherwise be KTAP eligible who have chosen historically not to engage in a KTAP benefit because they determined that given the Kentucky Works program work and participation requirements and expectations, perhaps it was not worth it to them to participate in KTAP. Now, it will be interesting to see how this doubling of the KTAP benefits that will occur the 1st of March may change that playing field. Next slide, Lily. So Reese discussed the Kentucky Works program. Most KTAP clients fall into this category. There are several ways you can be exempted from the Works program, including disability, having a child under a year old, caring for an incapacitated family member, being a teen parent. But otherwise, if you don't meet an exemption, then you become part of the Kentucky Works program, which means you must register for work. This child support issue can be a sticky wicket for these clients. Sometimes these clients have a relationship with the other parent, and sometimes they're not terribly eager to reveal very much information about that other parent. They also understand that when they begin to collect child support income, that gets counted as income for many, or if not all, of these public assistance programs, and can negate their eligibility. So, you know, their KTAP eligibility can sometimes feel like a roller coaster in terms of, you know, their level of income and whether or not they're KTAP eligible in any given month. So when they are identified as work eligible and a Kentucky Works participant, then that participation/work requirement kicks in. Now, there are some generous supports that they also are eligible for that come from DCBS, which I've noted on there. The transportation and the vehicle repair cost increase the 1st of March as well. Next slide, Lily. So a Kentucky Works KTAP participant has to complete, generally speaking, a single parent is expected to meet a 30-hour-a-week participation requirement. 20 of those hours have to be met by one of these core activities. The Ready to Work program comes into play in that we do provide that subsidized employment opportunity that we call work study. And we also can count as vocational education for up to the 12-month maximum. Next slide, Lily. So once a KTAP client is meeting the 20-hour core requirement, then we can bundle one of these non-core but countable activities. So we have some students, for example, who do not want to take advantage of their 12 allowable months of voc ed. Some of our nursing students will say, we want to meet the work requirement and work through our associate degree program because we know we're going on for a bachelor's in nursing, and we know that's going to get tough, and we're going to save our 12 months for later. So our Ready to Work coordinators at all of our KCTCS campuses are able to work individually with these KTAP Kentucky Works students to customize their package so that they meet their participation requirement of 30 hours. It gets higher if there happen to be 2 parents in the family, but we make sure they meet with core, and we primarily use the TANF-funded work study component to meet their core expectation, and then bundle in voc ed. We can keep them, we can provide them for a short period of time, a very short-term targeted employability skills training opportunity. And of course, when we work with an adult ed enrollment, we can count hours in their adult ed program. Next slide, Lily. So Ready to Work provides some very intensive and intrusive case management along with advocacy. We connect these students on our campuses with supportive services, both on campus and off campus. We advocate to make sure that they're receiving any of the DCBS available resources and supports to them. We have found that because we place them in these work study placements, they are technically KCTCS employees. Therefore, we are required to do background checks. It's interesting how those background checks can evolve into an incredible career coaching tool based on what we find there. So we have work study agreements in place with both these students and the supervisors. They get involved in a time reporting process. Like I said, they're a KCTCS employee. And we added a financial empowerment or literacy component some years ago. And that's a very popular activity. And I think our students find that very helpful. Next slide, Lily. So we have this TANF-funded work study opportunity, which is actually a work-based learning opportunity for these students. We have defined it very broadly, and that as long as it helps them meet the KTAP core participation requirement, we can place them, as I said, on off campus. We can even place them into private sector placements. And we make every effort to ensure that those work study placements, in fact, are aligned with their career goal and their program of study. Many of our coordinators have gotten very savvy with these placements, and they cultivate some on-campus placements where they can have students very close and very highly managed and supervised as they improve their workplace skills. And then they can gradually move them into placements off campus in both public and private sector. Some of our placements land in DCBS offices, and many of those placements have evolved into full-time, unsubsidized work, as many of these work study placements often do. We budget and allocate those in 20-hour slots. We can have a student working up to 30 hours a week if they choose to, and many choose to do that in the summer when their class loads are not as heavy, or they may not be taking summer classes. Next slide, Lily. And that income is disregarded in terms of their KTAP benefits. So we have a data sharing, an MOU in place with DCBS to exchange information. Confidentiality is addressed in our contract, and we play by all of the DCBS confidentiality rules as well as the FERPA rules. Next slide, Lily. This is unfortunately very old LRC study, but I think it supports the fact that an education and training pathway based with any kind of work-based learning opportunity and experience that you might be able to partner with that is perhaps one of the best pathways for these folks.
Thank you, Shauna. That was a lot of great information, and don't worry, you'll all get the slides. Our final presenter before we go into some breakout groups is Tommy Wheatley with the Central Kentucky Community Action Council. And basically, Tommy, you sent me some high-level questions, and I know you'll kind of share. This is going to be, I'm going to stop sharing screen though, just because we'll be able to see your face more. All right, Tommy, thank you.
Okay, thank you. As she mentioned, I'm Tommy Wheatley. I'm the director of the Kentucky Works program for Central Kentucky Community Action Council. Basically, following Reese and Shauna, they've covered a lot of what the programs, how they work. But we cover 17 counties, and we are just one of the contractors, as has been mentioned, as Reese mentioned. And basically, we work with both the KTAP participants and SNAP ENT participants. And what we do, our purpose is to facilitate transition to employment by screening, assessing, job placement, job retention, and supportive services, with the goal always is to help them become self-sufficient. This would include obtaining education, training, experience, and employment. And I will say that I've been with this program since June of 2020, and we have been significantly impacted by COVID with the participants we deal with. With the state of emergency, there's been a good cause exemption, and a lot of the participants do not have to participate for the majority of the time. That is turning around now, and we are seeing, more people participating. So that's a good thing, and we're starting to get there, but it has been kind of slow. So basically, one of the questions that I want to go about, how are the people referred to us from the state? So basically, as I mentioned, we have two different groups. We work with KTAP recipients, and for those, we receive a referral in the Otis system, and we also get a paper referral through email directly from the DCBS case manager. Once we get that, we go into the system, we update the component that the referral was received, and we schedule that client's appointment. And basically, these notes are shared with DCBS case managers, so we can all see what's happening with the participant. And basically, talking about COVID part, the state of emergency ended in July of last year. The sanctions began December of 2022. So we are now getting more participants, getting more placed, and the program is working more as it should. We also work with SNAP. On those people, we receive a referral within the connectability system, schedule the appointments through the system. And as Reese mentioned in hers, the only ones that are required to participate are the ABODs, the able-bodied adults without dependents. But they have also, through the state of emergency, they have been exempt up to this point. And from the call we had with the state last week, whenever President Biden ends that state of emergency in May, they will be required to participate again. So July 1 is the date that we're looking at on that for them to be required to participate. So how do we assess them? So once again, like for our KTAP people, we call the client to schedule an appointment, either over the phone or sometimes they come into the office. We did, while we were dealing with COVID and the good calls, we did all of it at that point through phone assessments. And one thing we learned during that, it seemed to be easier for the client sometimes than having to come into the office. And so we are still doing a lot of our initial assessments like that. Also, I cover 17 counties, but I've got some of my workers cover like 4 counties. So they were doing a lot where they would have an assessment scheduled in another county. They go to do the assessment, nobody shows up. So we've got the travel and all that. So we are kind of doing it now to where for a lot of them, we will do the assessment over the phone. Then when they go in for their work, we will meet them the first day of their work assignment and do the paperwork at that time. So it seems like it's worked out well, and that's kind of the way we've been doing that. On SNAP, we call the client on the day of their appointment. We complete the assessment online through the connectability system. And basically on both of these programs, what we do, we identify the barriers such as childcare, transportation, criminal background, housing, education, employment, do a basic needs assessments, look at their appearance, pre-employment skills, such as resume, interviewing skills, etc. So we look and see what their need is. We set up a plan, and then we work to put that plan in motion. The next question, how do you refer students who are interested in education to institutions? And I know Shauna talked a lot about the Ready to Work program. So basically when we're working with the client and they express interest in pursuing further education, we will send an email to the Ready to Work coordinator through KCTCS. We provide the coordinator with the information needed. And we would either set up an appointment or have the, ready to work coordinator set up an appointment. What we have done, and it seems like it works pretty well for us, a lot of times we've set up that initial appointment in our office. The ready to work coordinator will come there, and it seems like it's worked really well. We also, I know I have a good relationship with Dr. Buckles here in Hardin County. I've worked with him for a long time whenever I was with the Education Workforce Development Cabinet. But he actually, whenever we have our staff meetings every other month, and we've had him participate twice where he was a presenter to all of my employment specialists in our meetings. I think it works. It gives them a face. He can kind of explain it better. And it seems like, I know we talk about making sure the programs intertwine, and I think it kind of helped us whenever we had that. But one thing I know, whenever we had the meeting dealt with Dr. Buckles, like the work part, they get paid $11 an hour in Hardin County. I know it's different in different counties, but where that, that really, I know from my employment specialist, I've seen that, it's like, well, that's good. That's better than they can get some places. So it seems like that we've picked up a little bit. We've had like 3 in the last 2 or 3 weeks that have gone to the ready to work. So it has picked up a little bit for us. Then the last thing I have, how to assess if activities someone engages in are successful. And we deal with a wide range of clients, so their success is often on a spectrum. Success for one client may be learning soft skills that better prepare them for finding and keeping a job. Others may need to obtain their GED while in our program, or may move on to higher education. Many of our clients will learn skills while participating at the volunteer site that's going to better equip them to get a job and to stay in that job. So our goal is for the clients to become more employable and to help them navigate their barriers to achieve success in life. So we do follow up monthly with them. We do they retain employment for 6 or 12 months? I know in KTAP, if we put them in a job, we follow up, and some part of ours is to look, do they keep employment for 6 months? Do they complete it for 12 months? If they're placed in a work preparation activity, and then if they're in job skills training, do they gain unsubsidized employment at the completion of that training? So just a few of the performance outcomes we have, like if they're in KTAP, we look to see that 60% of referrals are placed within 30 days of the referral to us. 60% of job skills training gain unsubsidized employment upon completion of training, and 100% are scheduled for assessment within 15 days. So once we get them, we work with them quickly. And then those are just some of the things through our contract that, we are obligated to, goals that we are obligated to meet. And then with SNAP, we also look at the number of people that complete training, education, or work experience. We record the number that obtain recognizable credential, diploma, or apprenticeship. And then also the number that completed high school or equivalent prior to the ENT services with us. And that's what I got. I don't know if we've got 2 people that are more expert than I am on this call, Dan Gillum and Kimberly Boyd Lane. I don't know if they would have anything to add or if this covers everything adequately, but I appreciate the time to share with you all. And, I will mention, like with Reese, where she talked, we have a very good relationship with DCBS, with Reese and Ann there, with Jennifer Miller, with KTAP, our instructors with Ready to Work. So, it's great working with all these people.
Thanks, Tommy. Kim or Dan, did y'all have anything to add?
No, Tommy did a great job. He did a great job covering everything, just ensuring that, we know that, I have to put this out here, Goodwill is a 50-50 partner across the state, so we can also assist in directing those individuals to our post-secondary partners as well.
Tommy covered it pretty well.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. I just looked whenever I looked at the names on there and I was presenting, I thought, well, these 2 know more than me. So, and Kim, we have a great relationship with Goodwill. We refer a lot of our clients. That's the first referral because they do a lot of good work with them on helping them prepare and everything too. So that's a great relationship that we have as well.
Wonderful. It sounds like we have a lot of strengths in Kentucky that we can build on. I think that that's kind of where we're going to head next. And I know that was a lot of information, but whatever it was that kind of pinged you or kind of struck you or made you think about another question that you had, we're now going to go into about 5 different breakout rooms. We'll just be kind of randomly grouped together. And we'll be taking notes, those of us who are facilitators, and just trying to gather, what are your initial impressions? What do you think might be some implications for us, for both our students or community clients, for the colleges and the universities, for our community-based organizations, and then also for state agencies. So hopefully we have enough time to kind of dig into each of these different critical partners and populations. So Nan is going to send us on our way. We'll have 20 minutes about in our breakout groups, and then we'll come back and wrap it up. I think we have about 3 minutes left of the meeting. So I am just going to go ahead and wrap us up here. Thank you all. I know our breakout room was filled with great ideas and suggestions. So all of the facilitators, if you don't mind just emailing me your document, if you were able to capture your participant list, that's great. If not, that's okay. Okay, so just what's next? Our next meeting is in a month on March 15th. And it's a Zoom meeting. So I hope you can just join us virtually. We will be hearing a welcome from the Commissioner of the Cabinet for Health and Family Services, Lisa Dennis, who I'm just really excited. You know, we've had a individual meeting with her, sharing the work of the Action Network. She's identified more people from her team to join us in this work. Obviously, this partnership is essential to any of the recommendations and partnerships progress that we hope to move forward. So she's going to help explain, you know, 1, the support of the cabinet, and 2, the alignment and kind of where the cabinet's focus and priorities are as we're taking all of these bits and pieces into consideration. We're also going to, I think, get some really great news about opportunities to enhance our policies here in Kentucky, and then also some really great insights that are flowing through the Campus Voice Research Project from our faculty research partners. Now, I believe that our 9 campuses were asked to share their kind of just a student level list of those who received emergency aid during this fall 22 semester. And the CPE data team is going to hopefully have some analysis for us that looks at retention of those individuals into the spring semester with a comparison group, and hopefully, you know, really getting a sense of what's the average aid that a student might have received that did hopefully make an impact on them being able to retain, and thinking about really our resources that we can provide to students that's really an ROI, both for them to continue their enrollment, but also for ultimately them to reach that goal of their educational attainment. So lots to come at the March meeting. It is 10:30 on the nose. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day and rest of your week, and I'll see you in about a month. Expect an email from me within a week that follows up from this meeting. Have a great one, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.